Good afternoon and welcome to CPI's webinar on 6 best practices for implementing knowledge management for your contact center, agents, and customers. Just a couple of housekeeping tips before we get started. You have the ability to ask questions using your questions pane. Just type in your question and click send, and at the end of the presentation, Steve will do a Q&A session and take as many questions as we have time for. This webinar also is being recorded and will be blog at www.comprod.com/blog this coming Tuesday, November 18. Just a quick bit of information about CPI. We've been successfully implementing advanced mission-critical customer experience solutions for over 3 decades, engineering, implementing, and now supporting the customer experience solutions of over 120,000 business professionals in 23 states, including the United States Department of Defense, the United States Coast Guard, and Lucas Oil Stadium, the home of the 2012 Super Bowl. As a matter of fact, a recent project that CPI completed enabled Panera Bread Company to reduce agent handle time by over 50% overnight. So if you'd like to download that case study, you're more than welcome to. It's on the home page of our website at www.comprod.com. And now we want to turn it over to our presenter, Steve McKinney, who is the Customer Experience Designer at CPI, who we refer to internally as the CXD, has over 23 years of contact center experience and worked with a lot of Fortune 500 companies throughout. And he has been the subject of articles and received awards in One-to-One magazine and Call Center News, and has some really unique insights into knowledge management. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Steve.
Great. Thanks, Chris, and good morning, everyone. Today's webinar is really focused around knowledge management and some of the best practices of how to deploy knowledge management within your organization. This question comes up a lot. I do visit a lot of different companies and contact centers throughout the country. And one of the areas that people talk about a lot is knowledge management, and they have questions. How do we get started? You know, what benefits are there to it, and so forth. And so really I feel like today is a really good opportunity for us to have a good discussion about best practices and how to go about getting knowledge management into your organization. So I've got a little diagram off here to the right, and it's supposed to represent kind of a whiteboarding session that probably is taking place in most organizations today. If it's not, it soon will be. And what we are looking at is really kind of a knowledge base being the focal point here, and then how do you take that knowledge and spread it throughout your organization as well as exposing it to your customers. So you can see on my whiteboard here I've got knowledge base in the center, and then I have phone agents and chat and mobile apps, and do we want to use it internally? Does it need to be on the websites? How do we use it in email and so forth? So that is really what I'm seeing on a lot of whiteboards throughout different organizations and companies. And today I'm going to talk about how to get that put in. So here's your questions. What is our goal with knowledge? What benefits will we see? How do we get started? Are there best practices in building knowledge? Where should you use knowledge, and how to maintain that knowledge over time? So that's really my focal point for today, is those areas. So the first thing that we're going to talk about here is what do we want to achieve? And anything that you see in this presentation that I underline or bold really means that I'm trying to stress that point to you as we're going through this. So what do you want to achieve? The very first thing, and probably the most important thing, is that you want to ensure that your customers with the same question receive the same response, regardless of the agent or the interaction channel that they come in on. So if that is not a focus for your organization today, it really should be. And when I say interaction channel, I'm really talking about everything. Phone calls, whether it's the web, whether it's email, it's chat, social, the whole works. Everything should have a knowledge base that it is focused and pointed to, so that they are getting consistent information. Increase customer satisfaction levels through web self-service. So if you're not familiar with the term web self-service, During the presentation today, we're going to actually go out and look at some live websites, and I'll describe to you exactly what web self-service is. Centralize one location where staff can access knowledge articles. So the same importance level for presenting information to your customers with that same question, same response type of attitude can also be taken internally to your organization. One of the problems that I've seen throughout my career is what we call tribal knowledge. So you've got organizations and you've got your superstars that have been there for years and years, and they have accumulated a lot of information. It's either through attrition or if they decide that they want a different career path, you can lose that knowledge that they have if you're not utilizing a centralized knowledge base and really focusing on trying to spread that throughout your organization and get people to take what's in their mind and in their experience and put that into knowledge articles. So that's what I mean by centralize one location. Reduce call handle times. That should be a focus and a goal of any contact center organization, and knowledge management can help you do that as well. Reduction in call volume. So that is also something that I don't know any organizations that I've ever worked with that say, we'd like to get more call volume, please, Steve. The main goal there is always how can we reduce the call volume but still provide excellent customer service. So the next slide that we're going to look at here are what are the typical benefits of having a strong knowledge base. So if you're looking at really kicking off an initiative within your organization to use knowledge management both on the customer-facing side as well as internal, a lot of times what you'll run into is we don't have the resources or we don't have the time, and those resources, financial resources, or it could be human resources. But when you sit down with a director or vice president of customer service, one of the things that you're going to need to do is have kind of your talking points and your bullet points with you as to why does this make sense and why should we be really focusing on this within the organization. So what are those benefits? 35% reduction in time that it takes to train new agents. I think that is pretty substantial, something that most organizations are looking at 2 to 3 weeks, sometimes more, in ramping up new agents. If you have knowledge base there, for those new agents, they can actually learn quicker, and as on the fly, if they're talking to customers, they can reference that knowledge base. 40% reduction in inbound emails due to easy access to information. So what does that mean? That means that when they go to your website and they're looking to send you an email, if you have a strong knowledge base out there, there is a 40% chance that knowledge base can actually take and it doesn't turn into an email into your organization. 25% agent shift away from low-value calls due to self-service knowledge base. So again, to kind of describe what I mean by that is 25% agent shift away, meaning which they are dealing with the more complex issues, things that could not be addressed through a knowledge base. So really it's kind of that low-hanging fruit of the easy answers should be knowledge base articles for your customers. The difficult ones probably should come to an agent. But with a strong knowledge base, you're going to actually deflect some of those low-hanging fruit, if you will. 40% reduction in talk time in a support center. We've seen this time and time again with a strong knowledge base. As Chris mentioned in the beginning of the presentation, that we just did this for Panera Bread, and they have seen a 50% reduction in their handle time. Some of that is knowledge, others is other system changes that we made for them, but knowledge plays a huge part in that. 8% reduction in support calls. Again, you can see at the bottom that these statistics are coming from Gardner from the March 2014 article about knowledge management will transform your CRM or your customer service. So I am going to go out on a limb here and say that 8% is very conservative. I believe that it's probably closer to 15 to 20% in reduction in support calls, and that's been my experience over the last 10 years. 25% or more reduction in customer service support costs. So if you're looking at sitting down with a CFO of a company, that last bullet point is the one that they're going to be most interested in, which is what does it do for us financially? So if you have a good knowledge base in place, you can actually see a 25% or more reduction in customer support calls. So I'm going to talk about a quick story here as far as how do we get started, and I'm going to utilize, and hopefully nobody on the call here works for the U.S. Department of State or the State Department in Washington. If so, I apologize up front. But when you talk about getting started in knowledge, I want to tell you a couple of years ago, the State Department decided they were going to actually expose knowledge base articles for constituents, or in other words, customers. And in launching this knowledge base for the constituents, they decided that they may not have had the internal expertise to really come up with what kind of questions customers or constituents actually wanted responses to, and so they went out and contracted with Northwestern State University. And they said, Northwestern State, we want you to go in and utilize the best brain power that you have and help us come up with at least 100 answers that we can put out onto the website for our constituents. And Northwestern University said, that's fine, we'll take it, and they, I don't know how many millions of dollars they spent, but it took them 2 years to come back with 100 answers that the State Department then took, put out onto their website for the constituents to look at. Now, in doing so, with this massive brain power at Northwestern University, when they put those answers out there for customers, they looked at the accuracy rate, or in other words, all those answers that they had, you know, how accurate were they based on customer feedback? The answer to that is 8%. So after millions of dollars, 2 years in the process, they came back from Northwestern with an 8% accuracy rate based on constituent experience. Now, what they decided to do is what I'm recommending that you do when you're talking about knowledge base, is instead of trying to overthink it, which you don't want to do, what you look at is feedback. So customer feedback. How do you get it? You get it through emails, you get it through phone calls, and that's the reason I have this graphic on here of a guy shouting through the bullhorn. Your customers will tell you exactly what kind of knowledge you need. When I have gone out and helped customers deploy knowledge base, you know, they say, well, where do we start, Steve? What do you recommend? I said, do you get emails today? And they say, yes, we do. And I said, there you go. Start going through those emails, either a month's worth, 6 months worth, and start to really kind of categorize them into different areas, and then start to break those out and say, here are 10, 15, 20 different areas in which our customers are always asking for information. Use that to then build your knowledge base articles. So the State Department, after that, what I would consider an epic failure of an 8% accuracy rate, started to actually look at the emails the customers were sending in, use that feedback, and then turn around and basically gutted the 100 answers that they got from Northwestern, rebuilt those, and with that they received an 89% accuracy rate on those knowledge base articles. So the idea behind this is really just don't overthink it. The customers will drive your knowledge. So another, how do we get started here? So number one, I think what I've talked about with the Northwestern State example there, enable your customers to drive that content. So give them the ability to ask questions through a web form, through email, however you have to do it, but let them drive the content, okay? Number two, identify a knowledge administrator. I call them, you know, an answer Jedi, if you will, but you really need to have somebody within your organization that takes a hold of this, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a full-time position. So I know that resources are very tough in organizations today, but it could certainly be a part-time or take somebody who already has some other responsibilities that are close to knowledge and make this part of their focus in their job. So create that answer Jedi who can really drive it within your organization. Number three, establish subject matter experts to represent different departments and create a Jedi roundtable. So whether it's a once-a-month meeting that you get together and kind of go through the top 10 knowledge base articles that have been submitted. But that Jedi Roundtable is really your subject matter experts, and they represent different departments within the organization. Number 4, review current knowledge base articles. I put in parentheses here, bring a trash can, because a lot of organizations have knowledge today and it is kind of disorganized, it's outdated. So, when you're going through that first internal audit of what you have, don't be afraid to start to kind of throw some things in the trash and start over. Number 5, look for trends in customer complaints, either through phone, email. Those are both really key focus areas that customers are providing you feedback. You just need to start creating a way in which you can listen to that and then categorize those and say, here's some things that we hear all the time. And I guarantee you can go down to a contact center floor and grab a couple of agents, and they can probably very quickly spout out to you 10 things that they deal with day in and day out. Those should be knowledge base articles for your customers. Number 6, allow agents and staff to propose answers. So this is something that I feel very strongly about. The expertise within the company, even though you have your subject matter experts from different departments, the people that really have their ear to the ground, so to speak, are those contact center agents and some other staff members. Allow them to propose. Doesn't mean that their answer is necessarily going to be published out there on a website, but the ideas that come in will spark other ideas, and then those can also turn into answers as well. So I've got a little picture off here to the right of a guy that works for Acme, with a t-shirt that says "Got Knowledge," right? So it's just kind of an example of something that I have done in my past experience at creating contests, if you will, within an organization to say, if you submit 10 knowledge base articles, you get a free t-shirt or something to that effect. So make it fun and try to incorporate it into your company. Number 7, perform analysis of web customer search terms and phrases. So a lot of organizations today have kind of a web administrator, and everyone kind of knows who that person is. They have more information than you think. If you have a search box within your website today, they're capturing information of what people are searching for. And I've been to many, many, many companies and gone to their websites and typed in something that I thought was pretty basic, and it came back and said nothing found. And that to me is a missed opportunity to have a knowledge base article. So go to that web administrator and say, hey, what are people searching on, not only on our website, but Google Analytics can also provide you a lot of really key information on what people are searching for with regards to your company. So take that, perform an analysis of it, see what kind of search terms they're going after, and then tie those back to knowledge base articles. Number 8, begin the process of making knowledge part of the company. I kind of touched on that a little bit with number 6 there, but create contests out of it, make it fun, have a kickoff, but put some thought and effort behind it so that the company and the people within the company know that you're serious about it, that this isn't just some kind of fad, or yeah, now we're really looking for knowledge, but next month it's we'll never hear about it again. So you really, really, really need to make this part of your company culture. Best practices in knowledge management. So my bold here is less is more. So I've got my little graphic over here of the person who probably represents someone in a different department, and you say, hey, we're going to start putting knowledge out there for customer use. Can you bring us some ideas on knowledge base articles? So in my mind, that's the graphic that I created there of this person showing up with this huge stack of articles. That is not necessary, especially when you're getting started. So less is more. Use the 80-20 rule in knowledge management. So 20% of your articles should really handle 80% of the questions coming in. Too many articles only causes clutter. So if you've got, and I think everybody on this call has probably gone to a website and they found a knowledge base, but there's just so much information out there, you almost kind of gloss over the I's and it doesn't really pertain to what you're looking for, and you move on or you pick up the phone and make that phone call. So too many articles causes clutter. Users, and this is something that I've looked into and really kind of done some investigation on, and it's very true, which is users spend 80% of their time looking at information above the page fold. So when you're looking at knowledge-based articles and you're looking at website design in general, customers typically don't scroll. So if they hit your web page and you have, FAQs or contact us at the very bottom, there's a very good chance they're not going to scroll down there to see it. So some of the examples that I'm going to show today of customers who have knowledge built into their web pages, you're going to see in almost every example that help or support center or customer service, that link for those knowledge-based articles is at the very top of the web page. Make knowledge dynamic. So place relevant answers at the point of need. And what I mean by that is you may have a knowledge or an FAQ page on your website, but if they flip to other pages within your website, does knowledge kind of carry over into those pages? So if you're going to a government page and you hit the main page and you look at knowledge-based articles, and then you click on something else like, am I eligible for this particular service? Is there knowledge-based articles on that page that say, click here to find out if you're eligible, and so forth. So place relevant answers at the point of need is really important. Utilize a knowledge system that ranks answers and places the best at top. So if you don't have a built-in knowledge management system for your web page, it's something you should really consider and look at, because if you're doing it right, answers should be dynamic. They shouldn't be static. I know that I'm not going to sit here and bash companies who have static FAQs, because I'd say about 80% of them probably do. And I'm sure that they probably serve some functions. But let me just say this, the newer Gen Y, younger customers who are coming up, the ones that have been raised and have never known life without a cell phone or the web or internet, they have a short attention span, and they also know what static is. And if they don't see that a knowledge-based article has been updated or that it's fresh, they tend to just kind of go right past it and go to a different way of contacting your company. So you need to be able to show customers, and I'm going to give you some examples here today that you can look at, where you can actually see that this article was updated last month or it was updated 2 days ago. That is really key and important, so that it needs to be dynamic. And then based on usage, those answers should actually raise to the top. And if they're not being utilized, then they should not appear in the first 10 or 15 answers that somebody sees. So let's talk about internal answer processes here for just a moment. So some best practices on an internal basis is step 1, you need to define a process for proposing new answers. Step 2, define an approval and review process for new answers. So these are really kind of some best practices for that answer Jedi person that I mentioned earlier on a different slide. So when you have identified that person and they start getting on their feet and getting the system going, a lot of times they'll say, well, okay, so now we've kind of got this rolling. What process do we need to follow on the knowledge management side? So, an approval process means that the Answer Jedi is not necessarily the end-all before something gets published out to the web or internally. So you might want to have people who actually are responsible for reviewing those. You want to define a process for how that happens. Determine the audience for new answers. So is this knowledge-based article a customer-facing? Is it customer and internal-facing? Or is it just internal? So when you're creating articles, you really need to identify who the audience is. And then determine the web display position of new answers. So is this something that's really important? Does it need to be at the very top of all of our FAQs? Is it something that needs to be put into a different page by itself? So that's where step 4 comes into play. Step 5, notify staff of new answers. So the worst thing that you can do is put out a new knowledge base article to a customer-facing site and not notify people internally that that's out there. So there's just no excuse for a customer having more knowledge than an internal person. So make sure that when those answers go out, everyone is aware of that. Again, more best practices in knowledge management. Answer content development. So I've got my little recipe book off to the right there. Step 1, again, I have this bold and underlined. So write the content of these knowledge base articles for your customers and not for you. The example that I like to use in that is, if you're writing a knowledge base article and your company is a surfboard company, you might want to use different terminologies. You might want to write it differently based on who's actually consuming that knowledge base article. So look at your company culture, look at your customers, and then write the answers based on what they need. You also need to look at, readability tests. So there are free places out there on the web that you can put in your content and your text and make sure that it's at a 7th grade reading level. That is a best practice really for all websites, but especially for knowledge. And I know that sounds a little bit crazy, but 7th grade really is the standard, and it needs to be, run that through a readability test to make sure you're hitting that. Number 2, organize your knowledge base answers. So taxonomy, what I mean by that is those knowledge base articles should really roll up to a category within your system. So even if you're organizing these in a spreadsheet or however you're doing it, each article should really kind of tie back to an overall category within your organization. So when you're developing those, make sure that there's some taxonomy to that. Number 3, lay out your content for easy scanning. So again, if you have an answer and it is 6 or 7 paragraphs long, that's really not going to work. The person's going to probably read the first 2 or 3 sentences, maybe the first paragraph, but that's as far as they'll go. So when you're creating knowledge base articles, make sure that it is concise. Keep it to a paragraph, maybe 2. Images, number 4 there, be careful when you're using rich media. I'm not saying don't use videos and pictures because, as we all know, the newer generation of kids, they love bullet points, they love videos, they love photos. So use them, but don't overuse them. Number 5, perform effective monitoring and reporting. So when you do put knowledge base articles out there either for internal staff or for customers, it is so important to be able to report on that. So if you don't have a way to do that, talk to us. We can help you with that. But just putting out static FAQs and not being able to know whether or not people are looking at them is not going to help your organization as much as you would think. So you really need to be able to tie back some reports to how effective are those articles. And then number 6, create a brand style, a voice for your answers. So as I mentioned before, writing the content for your customers and not for you, it's the same thing here. If you have verbiage, if you have a style that your customers are used to, make sure that your articles are written with that same brand style and the voice that the customers are used to hearing for you. Next slide here on best practices and knowledge. So again, I've got a graphic over here that kind of says customer feedback and measure and revise and review, legal, publish, and then the cycle just keeps continuing. So it doesn't stop. If somebody says, hey, we've gone out, Steve, we've done everything that you said to do, we've created all of our articles and we've got them out there and everything's really going well, we'll check back in 6 months and see how it's going. That's wrong answer. That cycle never stops. So once you've created a knowledge base article, you've put it out there for a customer, you need to be looking for knowledge feedback. So some of the best practices when you create knowledge is there should be some kind of button that says, was this helpful, yes or no, and the customer can kind of vote on that. That's what I call explicit feedback. Non-explicit feedback means that they're looking at your knowledge base articles, but they still send you an email or they pick up the phone. So those are things that you want to be able to track and look at, both explicit and non-explicit feedback, and then measure through analytics for on the other slide. Article click rates. So are people looking at those articles? What rate are they looking at them? What are the search terms that people are looking at? So measure what's happening after you've put the knowledge base articles out there. And then revise that content. So just because it's valid today doesn't mean that it's going to be valid next week or 2 months from now. You know, I use the example that when we were working with Panera, that you know they might have a knowledge base article about their sweet tea, right? But all of a sudden, in the middle of the summer, there's this heat wave in the middle of the U.S., and you know their sweet tea consumption goes through the roof. Those are the kind of things that you can't really predict that come out of nowhere, and you need to be on top of that and make sure that knowledge is there to handle those kinds of things. So be ready to revise it, change it on the fly if you need to. And then internal review. So legal, grammar, formatting, and brand persona. Those are all things that, you know, as somebody creates knowledge base articles, you want to make sure that they're going through a review process internally before they're, you know, sent out to a customer. Make sure that they hit all those things. So, you know, if you go back today and you say, man, I'm going to start putting some knowledge base articles out there on our website because Steve said to do it, don't get me in trouble. So if you have a legal process that you need to follow, please do it. But make sure that you have that process in place so that it's not sitting there for 2 weeks waiting for a legal review, and the opportunity has come and gone to get that out there. So have a process set for that. And then, of course, publishing those articles. So if you follow that cycle of customer feedback, measure, revise, review, and publish, and just keep going on that, you're going to have a lot of success with this. So the next question would be, where should I use knowledge? That's going to be, you know, one of the questions that as you go through this process. Steve, where's the best place to use knowledge? I'm going to tell you everywhere. That's my standard answer, but to be more specific, website, e-commerce, mobile enabled is important because as we know now, 80 to 85% of all consumers will hit your websites with their mobile device. So you need to make sure that if you're putting knowledge out there, it is mobile enabled. Agent desktops, so email responses, chat responses, voice agents, that's where knowledge can be key. Make sure that it's searchable so that when they're on the phone with somebody and they have a question, they can type in a phrase or a part of a word, and it's going to come back and present them with some knowledge articles that they can use. But in email responses is very easy to do. When you're responding to a customer, if you can pop in a knowledge base article that takes care of that, you've already got it pre-formatted, it's done, it's approved for legal, that's going to speed things up. And again, going back to that first slide of consistent information, they get the same answer regardless of channel, regardless of agent. That's really what we're coming back to on the agent desktop side. Social. So this is a big area now that people are talking about. So how do we, you know, Facebook and Twitter and YouTube, you need to have the same kind of knowledge base in those medias as you would on your web page. So if somebody hits your company fan page on Facebook, there should be knowledge base articles out there for them in the same place. So make sure that you're providing them with that same consistent experience regardless of channel, Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube. Mobile apps, same thing. A lot of companies now, you know, Panera has a mobile app, Taco Bell now has a mobile app. A lot of people have these mobile apps to where you can do your ordering ahead of time. That is a perfect place to put knowledge as well. So I'd say any place where you touch customers, knowledge should be there. And then internal staff knowledge base can be just as important as everything else that I've talked about here. So articles that are strictly for internal use, but again, you're providing your employees, if you will, or the staff with the same kind of experience that the customers are getting. A centralized place where they can go and search and bring back knowledge base articles. One of the biggest successes that I have had recently within, it was about 10 years ago that I was working for a company, Uniden phone company, that makes cordless phones and whatnot. And they brought me in to run their contact center, and they had people doing emails and phone calls. And when I looked at putting a knowledge base out there for customers when I came on, I went to the people that did email and I said, what is the main thing that people send in emails for? And they said, owner's manuals. Hands down, everybody has lost their owner's manual. So I went out and deployed, and I spent a weekend attaching these PDF owner manuals to knowledge base articles, and had about 200 or 300 of those based on the different models that Uniden sold at the time. And literally the next week after that was put onto the web page, emails dropped by about 40%, and phone calls dropped by about 25 to 30%, because when people hit that website, that was what they were looking for, and it wasn't there before. So when I talk about knowledge and doing something like that, I was really, internally kind of looked at as a hero of, wow, look at that, all these reduction in cost and everything else. But I tell people it's so simple, it's stupid. I mean, provide the information the customer wants, and they don't want to always have to pick up the phone and call you. So, and especially these newer customers that are coming out, they, as we all know, the Gen Y folks don't really like to talk. They like to text message and so forth. So if you're providing them with a way to self-help, you're going to get a better customer satisfaction level in general. So maintaining this knowledge over time, so keeping it fresh, right? Keeping it fresh means we're going to set review dates on these. So as you create a knowledge base article, think of it as kind of a loaf of bread or a gallon of milk. Of course, you're not going to wait every 6 months to change out your milk, but you get the idea. You want a review date on it. You want to make sure that it really doesn't expire, that it's fresh. So when you create knowledge base articles, look at them every 6 to 8 months. I would say that's on the long side. Probably 3 to 4 months is really my true recommendation on that, but at the very least 6 to 8 months. Make sure that they're still valid and relevant. Your Answer Jedi, your knowledge administrator, should review those. Are they still current? Review answer feedbacks. So those meetings where you've got the Answer Jedi and the round table, those are the things that should be looked at. So are these articles still current? What are people saying about them from a feedback? What answer rating or scores are people giving these particular knowledge articles? All those things should really be looked at from a human standpoint. Subject matter experts are assigned to review their articles, so if they propose them, if you've got people from different departments that have created articles and submitted them for review and that they kind of are the owners of those, make sure they review them. So every few months, 6 to 8 months, they should be looked at. Does it need to be removed? Do we need to change the keywords people are searching for based on what our webmaster is telling us? Stay zoned in on issues that may come out of nowhere. So like I said, every company that I know of is affected by something, whether it be a time of the year. So if your business is cyclical and you know that Christmas time is coming, if you're in that industry, then make sure that your knowledge base articles are based and ready for that particular time of the year. Which leads me to my next bullet point: have articles ready and approved before a product launch. So if you're going to be coming out with something new or a new service, and you know about it a month ahead of time, don't wait until after you've launched it to then put knowledge articles out there. Have those ready to go, and then as soon as that product launches, the next day those articles are out there. So what I'm going to do now, we've kind of talked over this whole knowledge articles, and I've really spent a lot of time talking about the customer-facing side of it. I want to show you what I mean by that. So we're gonna get out of the PowerPoint here for a second and jump over here to the web. And I've got a couple of different sites pulled up here that I'm going to show you, some government, some educational. This company here, Independent Health Association, they've done a really nice job at what I consider putting their entire website above the page fold, you can see that I do not have to scroll to get to anywhere. And then what they have right here on their web page is the help center, right? So they have frequently used forms, 24-hour medical helpline, and so forth. So it's right there, it's ready to go, and a customer doesn't have to really look around, and they don't have to scroll to try to find something. So Independent Health has received J.D. Edwards, awards for customer service, and I can see why, because they've really got a nice web page here. Boost Mobile, same thing. They're pretty high up in customer satisfaction ratings. But again, you can see on the Boost Mobile site here at the very top, they have their support button, right? So frequently asked questions. Even though theirs are static, I can guarantee you that they're preventing a lot of emails, a lot of phone calls by just providing information on how to get started, how to use their phone, and so forth. One of the other sites that I like to utilize, and this is a customer that I actually worked with personally on their knowledge and their customer service, is DirecTV. Not only do they have their product line, but their knowledge base, everything built into a support keyword search right here at the very top, so where it says product, support, shows, search movies. But you'll also notice that right over here at the very top is their help center. So this is a best practice. I'd say DirecTV is one that I like to use a lot. So if you click on the help center, it says, do you need help? Start here. And what it does is it goes through kind of what I call a visual IVR of, I need help, can you help me? Troubleshoot my service. So I just click on that and it says, what kind of problem are you having? Is it equipment? Yes, it is. What to do if you've lost your service. I'm going to click on that, and then it automatically brings up knowledge base articles. So I can click on any of these and get to exactly what I need. So this is a good example of a good article, an easy way to get to those knowledge base, and then of course you'll always want to have the search box, just like what DirecTV has done here. So being able to go and use keyword searches to get to that same knowledge. British Telecom has done a very similar thing, so they've got theirs set up on phone, broadband, TV, and support. So you've got all those different links there, but one of their common ones, I guarantee you, is forgotten your password. So if you click on forgotten your password, you can see here that they've got their knowledge base article, and then they also provide answers that others found helpful. So they also have received awards, and they've also reduced their call volume by about 25 to 30% the last time I checked by just utilizing these. Another example of good knowledge base setup is believe it or not, it's a government organization, the Social Security Administration. And you can see when you hit their page here that, again, without me having to scroll or do anything like that, you can see that they have their FAQs right here at the very top. And they also have items of interest down here of FAQs. So two different places, people can't miss it, and they say, Social Security number and card. They click on that, and then guess what? So within 2 clicks, I'm right here in the area that I need to for my knowledge base articles. And then I can click on those and actually review them. So part of what I was talking about as far as showing people that these are dynamic and live, this is a good example, is the Social Security Administration. You can see right here that this article actually has a date of September 8th, 2014. That's the last time that it was actually modified. People pay attention to that. They look at that and say, okay, this is pretty fresh, it's up to date. Otherwise, they can kind of smell it out and say, I don't know if this is new, old, if it's been looked at in the last 5 years, but if you're displaying to them that you're actually keeping them fresh and modified, they'll pay more attention to it. The last site that I'm going to show is the University of Michigan. So undergraduate admissions, again, when you hit that page, you can see here that they have a Ask a Question, which is kind of the same as a knowledge base, and it takes them right into their knowledge base articles. Again, they have done what I consider a best practice, and you can actually see that there is a date updated on each one of these articles. So people that are viewing this page can actually see when the last time it was touched. And we can click on that, and you can see here that they are looking for explicit feedback. Was the answer helpful? And I'm sure a lot of you on the phone today on this webinar have been to articles, have seen articles like this. You've seen the answer feedback ratings and so forth. If you have, that really, those people are hitting it right on the head as far as looking for feedback and trying to use those to better the knowledge base articles and so forth. So with that, just wanted to kind of give you some examples of exactly what I'm talking about as I'm going through the knowledge base and what it should look like. And at this point, we're going to open it up for a Q&A session.
Thanks, Steve. We do have a couple questions here, and I would encourage any of you that are listening today to send them through the chat button, and we'll get Steve to answer your questions. But Steve, starting out, a couple of them. The first one is, who typically manages the knowledge base in an organization?
Great question. There's been a long time battle, I think, if you will, friendly battle between the marketing organizations and customer service organizations. And then I guess if you want to throw in the web development team into that mix, you can as well. In my opinion, the place where it should reside is within the customer service operation team. That does not mean that marketing doesn't have their input, especially on the branding and the look and feel of knowledge-based articles. But when you want to really get down to it, to me, that should be really owned and sponsored by the customer service area.
Very good. And then the second question that we have is, how long does it take to get a knowledge project, kind of like you described today, up and going?
Getting the first step of getting the knowledge base initiative up and running is really, again, identifying where does it reside, so it should be kind of in that customer service area, and then identifying someone as a knowledge Jedi, if you will, that administrator. Again, does not have to be a full-time position. It can be part of someone's job duties, but really kind of getting that going and making sure that the company is aware that this initiative is underway and that it is an extremely important one. So, you know, the best thing to do is to have top-down coverage on this, so from the president or CE level all the way down, saying this is an initiative that we feel strongly about and it's not going away and we're going to really kick this thing off. But you can start to have results from this and put knowledge-based articles either internal or externally. I've seen companies do it within 2 to 3 weeks. So that is not unrealistic, but realistically there is, you know, you're looking at probably 6 weeks to 8 weeks to really have this underway and you know, building up some steam.
Excellent. Thank you for that. So we did have another question that came in and talked about asking if you could drill in on the reporting side of things. So what additional information would a knowledge base administrator look to report on from their knowledge management initiative? Sure.
So from a knowledge administrative, you know, from an analytics side of it, really what you're looking at is what I had mentioned before, which is kind of click-through rates. How many people are viewing it, you know, start to compare knowledge base articles that are viewed versus your phone calls and start to really look and see is it making a difference, and if not, does it need to be tweaked. Looking at search terms is critical. So a lot of companies, and I'm going to jump out here if you don't mind and go back to some of these websites here, but if you do not have a search box on your web page, you're missing out on a lot of things. But as people start to search, you're capturing that information. You want to report on it and see what is it that they are actually searching for so that you're tying back articles to that. So looking at click view rates, looking at the success of the articles, how many times are they viewed, what are people searching on, those are really the key analytics that you're looking for on that. And then again, tying those back to phone calls and emails and starting to really do some analytics on, are these knowledge-based articles really serving the purpose? Are they doing what we want them to do?
Very good. And I think that wraps up our Q&A for this afternoon. And I did want to let you all know that for attending the webinar today, Steve McKinney himself is committed to providing a web assessment that would analyze the customer-facing knowledge that each of your organizations have available to your customers today. And at the beginning of the presentation, Steve showed some what I would call some mind-boggling statistics that are real. And the assessment that he would provide you would show you exactly what you need to do to achieve those similar results. And I guess the good news for you today is that you don't have to do anything right now. Our team will reach out to you to see if that's something that you're interested in, and just to explain the really, really simple process to go through to get that insight. And with that, I wanted to thank you for attending today. I appreciate your insight, Steve, and wish you a good afternoon.